hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome back to another edition of our new series, Our Girls Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined by Mike Benelli, and the newest addition to our hosting team, Sherry Hudspeth from the Vegas Golden Knights. Our goal with this show is to tackle the topics and discussions surrounding girls' youth hockey to better the game for everyone. And if you are involved in hockey in any way, we're going to provide value and insight to create both a better environment and experience for everyone involved. For this show, we introduce topics and questions to discuss, and each episode will have a featured expert panelist from around the game to engage in that discussion. For this episode, the topic is 5 myths about women's hockey, and our expert panelist is a skater for the Puerto Rican national ice hockey team and a recent graduate from Utica University, where she served as the director of operations for their NCAA women's program. Hannah Beckman joins us today. Hannah, welcome to Our Girls Play Hockey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
We are excited too.
Good morning, Hannah. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on our new show, Our Girls Play Hockey. Before we dive into the myths, Lee's told us all about you. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing with the Puerto Rico Ice Hockey Organization and how that's growing?
Yeah, well, a little scary what Lee has said. I can't wait to wonder about that.
That's an off-the-air discussion.
It's an off-the-air discussion. Yeah, I have the honor to be on the Puerto Rican national team. I've been on the team. I've been a player for 4 years now, 3.5, 4 years. It's been crazy. It's been an awesome experience. It's obviously growing, like any new organization, whether international or travel or college, a lot of bumps in the road because it's new. So, but to just be a part of the process and be a part of the journey, it's been absolutely so fun. And to just say that I'm a national team member is super cool and something I never thought I would be able to do, obviously. As an American, and there was once upon a time where it was like, okay, probably not going to make Team USA at any point, and then all of a sudden, you're going about your college career and you get a call for the Puerto Rican national team. So ever since I got that call, it's been a commitment of mine for 4 years straight, and it's been so fun, and just seeing the growth and obviously the effect that being a Puerto Rican athlete has had on people on the island and just people of Puerto Rican culture around the world, honestly, has been so cool. And to just be a part of it, it's like I kind of have to pinch myself a lot.
You know what I love about that, Hannah, that you're bringing up, and we're starting with this, is that
Hmm.
I think the number one reaction that those of us involved in the Puerto Rican Ice Hockey Association get is there's ice hockey. You guys play ice hockey?
Yep.
And obviously the answer is yes. But what's cool about it is this does show how much the game has grown. And it actually segues perfectly into our first myth, which is that women's hockey is not competitive. It's competitive enough to have a Puerto Rican national team.
Yes.
Right? But I do want to start here with the panel. And again, this is the obvious one to start with, right? That women's hockey is not competitive. I'll just start by saying I've seen no evidence of that being true. Every women's game or even girls' game I've attended has been competitive. So why don't we start with you two, Sherry and Hannah? Why does that myth even exist?
Yeah, well, I think it dispels it with the rivalry series, right? Like if you look at the rivalry series between Canada and US, and I think that's the definition of competitiveness. Like on the ice, the game is very physical. There's a lot of chirping going on. Yeah, so I think this one's definitely a myth.
Hannah, why don't you dive into that? You've been on the ice too.
Yeah, I can't like stress it enough. It's such a myth. Like you mentioned it, the rivalry series, that's exactly the route I was gonna go at too. With Team Canada and Team Canada versus Team USA, and now like growing as we keep going. Now it's going into Sweden, Switzerland, Czech, all these teams and everywhere. I had the honor of being a part of this year's World Championships just as an intern because it was in Utica and we had that opportunity. And to see it like up front and personal, like you obviously see the competitiveness on TV and everything, but these girls are dialed. Like they're working for something that goes far more than themselves in anything. They're working for their country. They're playing for their country with an absolute huge pride on their back and their chests. And these girls just want to go out and they want to kick some butt. They're not friends on the ice. Obviously, all these players are teammates like in the PWHL or back in college, but once they have their respective nations on their chest, it's all fair game. And they just put their bodies on the line. They put their everything on the line. It's crazy. And you can tell just how driven they are. Like at Worlds, every girl, every athlete is dialed in, like that they're there to win. And it's kind of like, it gives you that like, oh my God, I want to be in that stage, because like the competitiveness is just unreal. And it's like, you can just feel it in the air. So that's a huge myth for sure.
I think some of the myth. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, thankfully, I think that myth is there because of, a bunch of old time hockey players that have never watched female sports, hockey, soccer, volleyball, whatever it is. I think that this shift has come with the fact that, now dads that played competitive hockey have daughters, and they're like, I'm putting my daughter in this, and I'm competitive, and my wife's competitive, and like all the people in the sport, the sport's growing. So you're going to get the more competitive people getting in it. And inherently, those girls are going to be more competitive, right? Because it's in their DNA. But I think, the old time, pro hockey fan is probably the one that's saying that myth. Like, oh, I would never pay for a ticket for competitive, to watch girls sports. But we're seeing that shift, right? The reason why you can fill an NHL arena for a PWHL game is obviously because there's a lot of people that don't believe that myth because they're living it. So I think it's just the transition of, moving from one norm to now a new generation of people coming through. And I think, what you're doing with Puerto Rican ice hockey, what Sherry does with the NHL, like that's the kind of stuff that continues to, break that barrier, I guess, from the people outside of the playing surface.
Sure, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, like in youth hockey too, around the rink when there's parents deciding whether they're going to put their daughter in girls or boys hockey. I think it might come from that too, where it's like parents maybe feel like girls hockey is not as competitive and my daughter has to play boys hockey so she can improve and go faster. But now I think as girls and women's hockey is growing and there's more girls playing, like Mike said, is like the hockey is going to be competitive right out the gate. Like here with learn to play, it's boys and girls, and then you go like into your continue to play program, it's boys and girls, and they're even. So yeah, definitely a myth.
Yeah, I think that this is a stigma to this one that's been broken heavily, especially in the last 12 months. In the way that women's sports has really exploded across this country, right? The other thing too is that I can tell you this just from my own experience. I have never played hockey with a woman who was not extremely competitive, number one. I have never coached a woman that was not competitive. And again, when I spend time with Priha, Team Puerto Rico, you can see it. I mean, the will to win, the will to compete, the will to get better is the same. I think also too that there is a stigma within this myth where I hear people say, well, they can't check. And it's like, look, first off, if it's a rule, it's not within their control, because if they could hit, they would. And the other thing too,
in PWHL, they do.
I was gonna dive into that in a minute.
That game's pretty wide open.
Oh yeah.
The other thing too is that sometimes I don't think people look at it through both lenses. It's not like the men's game is leaning towards more contact at this point. It's actually trending the other way, right? I did want to throw it to Mike one more time, because Mike invited me and the crew out to Hartford. He was coaching professional women's hockey, and that game was just fantastic. I mean, like, again, and this is the earlier years of women's professional hockey, Mike. So you've seen it firsthand from a bench. I mean, there's no lack of competition at that level.
No, and when you're able to put two teams in the Bridgeport, the Islanders, the semi-pro facility, and those women go through there and they're treated like pros, and the people that come in to watch them are watching them like pros, not like this is a novelty event. Now, this is a real pro hockey game. Now, are you going to get 18,000 screaming fans every single game if you had an 80-game season? Maybe. So at some point you're going to, but for right now, I think everybody has to just go with the fact that it's a gross sport, but when you're in it, the people that are actually in the sport, when you watch the Rose series, when you watch, Pee Wee Quebec girls, when you watch these rivalry series, they don't go in like, oh, let's just get through it and make sure we can all have a pizza party afterwards and everybody's friends, which they're going to be anyway, just like the boys.
Right.
I mean, and I'll tell you, and you talk about the body checking and the body contact. I mean, I watched those games as a first time, like in a pro atmosphere with competitive athletes like that, female athletes. I was like, oh my God, like that was a check. Like that was like a full out. Like I'm like, hey, and then me, I'm like, are you okay? I'm like, of course I'm okay. What the hell are you talking about? So I think it's like, but I think that's just getting over the fact that you're like, okay, well, this is actually, these guys are, this is a sport and it's a physical sport. And I think to your point about the men's game coming back to the center, like the men's game getting back to, let's not blow people up at center ice. And the female game saying, well, we don't do that, but there is listen, last week I just taught a checking clinic for 9 girls.
Yeah.
It was all girls, all body contact, body position, body, and just knowing how to take a check, give a check, and be in a clean place to separate the person from the puck. That's checking. I mean, so I guess you want to define, like, I think an old time NHL fans gonna be, oh, checking's Scott Stevens, that's a check. But that's not, the game is coming to a place where body contact and body position is certainly more important. And why? Yeah, because you want to win. You want to maintain the possession of the puck. And that's where I think, I know I get kind of knocked around a little bit by saying this, but that's why I have my young kids watch the female game more, because it looks more like youth hockey,
right,
than the men's game. It just does. It looks like the way you have to go in to get the puck looks more like you would if you were a 16-year-old male. Like it just does. So it's just, I try to use those because that looks like hockey. And plus they're wearing masks and everything. They look like, real hockey players. They don't look like Neanderthals out here. But I think it's like, I love the fact that it's competitive. It's the core of the game. It's the way the game looks like it should be played, right. And the skill level, and you guys have been a part of this, the skill level every single year gets like more and more and more impressive.
Yeah, Mike, happy to hear that you're teaching girls body contact, because it's going to be interesting going forward with USA Hockey. Like if PWHL, the very top where you're aspiring to get to, is going to have body checking or heavy body contact.
The competitive contact. Yes, I think that's the
girls. Yeah, but here's the problem. Girls all the way through the system have not been taught how to take a check or how to take a hit. So now you've gone through college, which is pretty physical, but if you're playing pro and now all of a sudden you're getting blown up, you have to learn. So like within the youth hockey somewhere, is it going to be like the boys where at 14U, we start teaching how to take and receive a hit, so it's, unless we start implementing that in the lower levels, and where do we do it in girls hockey? That's going to be a very interesting conversation going forward with USA Hockey. And I think it is just the same as the boys. It's around 14, when you start hitting, and then you go to clinics and you start incorporating it in practice. And the boys game's going more kind of away from it, like Mike said, is more stick on puck, more angling. And I think you see that in the women's game. There's a lot more emphasis on angling because you don't have the body checking, and a lot more emphasis on proper stick on puck play. And that's kind of the way that the NHL and the men's game is trending now, like less blow ups, rock 'em, sock 'em, and just more, finesse.
Yeah, but okay, Hannah.
Sorry, are you sure? Mike, you can go.
No, because I was gonna say, because you're the guest, so you could speak.
There's no competitive contact on this panel.
Competitive, Mike. I'm right here. I'm ready.
I'm just saying, like this is where like maybe the conversation we'd have, and it's probably we're getting to it, right? But like that, why parents keep their daughters in boys hockey longer, thinking it's a better way for them to learn the physicality.
That's a good tease for the next myth. Don't jump the gun.
That's a good tease, Mike.
I want to hear about why that. Like,
Hannah, you close the loop on the competitive one, and then we'll dive into myth number 2.
Yeah, just 2 like final points, like with it, like the first one being like, Sherry, you said like teaching, at some point in time, like whether it's like U14 or at some point, like, when I was growing up and like learning to play hockey, like contact wasn't even in coaches' back of their minds, right? Like they obviously taught board battles, but like to a point, it was like, okay, like we literally can't hit in girls hockey, so therefore we're not going to even touch on it for a second. I saw like one video like earlier in the off season, earlier in the off season, PWHL Ottawa was having a full practice based off checking. And that was something that I was like, look at that, because it is so obvious. And with the world championships, like these girls are so physical and it was insane. Like me being a D3 hockey player, like not that that's any much different hockey, but there's obviously a lot of competition, and girls are so riled up, and it gets physical. But at that level, the PWHL and the world championships on the national teams, it's like these girls are fully learning how to put their body down, how to play it. Where does it implement? Where is a right time for me to, okay, play the body rather than the puck? And it was so fascinating because I was in the stands at one point for one game, and this guy turned around to me and he was like, and Mike, you touched on it a little bit, the older generation of the girls aren't as competitive. The older generation, this guy turned around to me and he said, you want to know something? This is my first time at a really high competitive women's hockey game, and I want to come to more because the girls are not hitting as much and they're making actual plays. The guys sometimes, especially like in U18 or something, guys are so focused on, okay, a guy's coming down on me, far blue line, I'm here, the boards are there, I'm going to just deck them so I can get the puck. Rather in women's hockey, this girl is, okay, I'm going to make enough body contact, but then I'm going to go right for the puck and try to get it to my D partner. So it's like fascinating with, that's why also women's hockey is growing with how competitive in just hockey skill set, because it wasn't always checking. For girls hockey and women's hockey, you kind of have to always learn how to make the quick plays. And the higher level that I see these women are at, the play is just boom, 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 boom. It's so fast and it's like, whoa, what's going on? And it's like now that checking is involved, these girls are becoming so smart with how they're going to maneuver their bodies and then the puck in a blink of an eye. And I think it's like so fascinating. And I definitely like agree with Sherry, like with these girls, like I think there has to be at some point in time, maybe USA Hockey can implement, okay, same thing we were doing with little boys in check clinics and learning, hey, if you see numbers, do not hit the player when you're in front of the boards. You kind of have to implement that now with girls hockey.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the competitiveness, we can learn from each other, right? I think, and that's always the approach I try and explain it to younger coaches is, look, you can learn from anywhere. Women's sports, men's sports, different sports. When you take that approach of an educational background towards it, it's always better. But yeah, I guess we're kind of like myth busters here today. So I'll just say myth one, debunked.
Boom.
Creative, it's gone. But I'm going to move around here because I got several myths listed here. So I'm just going to kind of go with the next one that makes sense because we were teasing it. But here it is. Myth. You're more likely to be found playing boys hockey.
This is a myth. And why it's a myth found, I'm assuming we're referring to obviously college scholarships and moving on. If you're playing on a boys varsity team, say you're a goalie and you're playing in a high school league, like in Pittsburgh or something, like people are not going to see you. Like word's going to get out, but you need to be playing in these girls' showcases where the college coaches are, where they can see you compete, right? Like you can send video all you want, but coaches want to see you competing in person and what kind of person you are, how you act in the lobby, how you act around your parents. They need to see you. And to see you, typically you're going to be playing girls hockey and girls hockey showcases. So if you're hiding somewhere in boys hockey, that's great. But unless like the word gets out about you, a coach may not have the budget within their college program to fly out and come see you wherever you are playing your boys league, right? So if you're playing on a girls team, you're going to get to be in the showcases. You're going to get to go to girls tournaments and girls camps and be seen where these coaches are. And that's going to help you with your next steps.
Agreed. Myth busted. I feel I think one of the main questions I would get asked a lot too, like when I would tell people, yeah, I play hockey. This was like my youth of like this is where I went, played youth hockey. The first question is, so did you play with boys? I was like, no. Like I think I'm one of the few players, especially in my generation, who literally never stepped foot. Like I trained with boys, like just like skills camps or whatever, but I never like played with boys. And I think right now, specifically, I think it's starting to phase out, which is so good because exactly like Sherry said, like to get scouted by colleges, and I've seen it firsthand of what Utica University coaching staff does. They're going to these showcases that are all girls hockey based. And it's very specific on where they are going. The demographic, it's not like, oh, okay, we're gonna go to Mass and Connecticut and hit the tri-state area. It's not necessarily that, but there's always a list of prime showcase tournaments that college coaches are always going to attend. Beantown, which starts I think this weekend, Beantown Classic is a classic tournament that all colleges all throughout North America will be attending to watch girls who want to play in college hockey. Another one is CHS Showcase that happens during the summer again. Classic like turkey trot, like Thanksgiving tournaments. Ones in early November for Christmas, and then the ones in the spring, those start to a little phase out because all these coaches are then going to the championship showcases like the USA Hockey Nationals, etc. But if you're not going to those tournaments, which are girls hockey dominant, girls hockey alone showcases, you are not going to get scouted by the schools that A, you want, or B, you even think that you want. If you're going to boys hockey tournaments, you're going to have boys hockey coaches, college coaches, or juniors coaches. It's not going to help girls in the long run. So mainly, I think there comes to a point, I think also like at home, the conversations for parents is to, okay, you played hockey with boys for U8 and like U10. When it comes to U12, like you got to be all girls hockey, because if you want to get to the highest level, you have to go where you're going to be seen. Exactly like Sherry said, like the word may get out, but coaches really rely on in person, because you could hear all the words you want, you could see all the video you want, but coaches will make a decision based off of how they physically see you, because they're seeing all the behind the scenes as well, not only who you are as a player, but as a person too.
Also too, like I've coached at Post University, that was Division III when I was there, and we went to the Stony Creek tournament, and that was over 120 college scouts. So you have club, you have D3 coaches there, all the D1 coaches are there, and they're there to see the players and talk to the players, or not like when they can, D3. So if you're not in those tournaments, you're not going to be seen. If you are in those tournaments on a girls team, it's really going to help your chances of being seen. Also with the tournaments, when they check in, the coaches get a list of who's committed, who's uncommitted, so you may love a player but you don't know like if they're committed or not if you just found that player. So attending those tournaments as a coach too, you're going to know who's available and who's not available.
Yeah, if you're a parent listening to this, I think Sherry makes a great point. Like at Post University, when you're an assistant coach and you're out on the recruiting trail, you're not, if you're the men's coach and you're like at a high school boys game and you see some great female athlete, it's not even in your mind to be like, oh, I got to get a hold of the women's coach and tell her about this girl I just saw. Like, it just doesn't happen. You don't have the time, you don't have the inclination. It's not like the worlds aren't colliding there. So I think that, every once in a while, maybe if you have a good relationship with the other staff, but really it's like, listen, I'm here to look at these 4 players. Oh, wow, that girl's really good. Wow, she's good. Like, that's like to the men's coach. That's just like oh, wow, I can't believe she's really competing against these guys. She's doing a great job. But that's not then going to say, oh, I'm going to post this and get this girl some notoriety. Go to girls programming where the most people are going to be to see you. That's how you get found. But listen, if you're good enough, at the old adage from the beginning of time, you are good enough, you will be found. 100%. So no matter what you're doing, at the end of the day, people are going to find you.
There's also this, sorry, Lee, there's also this like underlining myth as well that I've heard some people like throughout like my career that some girls even, or like parents of players, will be like, well, my daughter played boys hockey, so yeah, they'll definitely make it far. That comes with, we don't know, because that's great. You can, like Mike said, you can compete against these boys, you can skate with them, you can do all these things. That's awesome. But if you're trying to make the college hockey level and beyond, coaches want to see how you compete with the competition that you're going to be competing against in college. So a coach can see, okay, great, that girl was able to, bounce off a hit from that guy, but okay, that guy isn't gonna be on University of Wisconsin when we're playing them in the WCHA, final. Like, like, and it's like they want to see. That's great, because some players as well, it kind of affects their game a little bit, that when they're playing boys hockey and then they transition to girls hockey, they're doing all these tendencies that are like, okay, wait, like that doesn't fly in girls hockey. Small, silly things, but also like a lot of big things that really can affect your game. So if you're sticking with competition that you're never going to see in girls hockey, that may help you with your physicality levels and your endurance and everything like that, and your puck reaction skills. But also, like, coaches want to see, okay, can you play against people we're going to be playing, against teams we are going to be playing? And like at these showcases, like when I was at Rice Prep, playing against Stansted College, they had a full roster of Wisconsin commits. It's like, okay, for me, that was terrifying. But like in the end, that also helped me, because I'm like, okay, wait, if I can go on a face-off against a Wisconsin commit, that kind of gives me a little leeway or a little positivity, for Division 3 competition or what have you. So it's like you kind of have to make the decision, okay, what's going to benefit me in the long run? And just at the end of the day, just saying you play boys hockey, it is probably not going to help you for the best.
So
The tier 1 girls programs also, they're going to have people on their staff. When you start getting up there, they're going to have people on their staff that are well connected within the recruiting trail coaches. And they typically send emails about like this player's doing this month, or they really help your chances of getting, promoted and stuff by just being well connected in the women's game.
I think it's also really important here that, like, again, the myth that we're busting is that you won't be found if you do this, right? Like the be found is the key thing. The myth is not you can't learn or grow from playing with boys, right? And again, we just did a great episode with Megan Bozak all about that, right? Because the journey in or out of boys hockey, if you're a young lady, there is no specific path, right? There's no answer of like, this is the moment you need to switch. I think there's value in playing hockey, period, whether it's with boys or girls. But again, for this myth that you can't be found if you don't play boys hockey, I think we've debunked that one big time. But it's important to understand the differences there. Like, if you have the opportunity to go out to a high level practice, right, with anyone, again, it doesn't matter to me if it's boys or girls, take the opportunity to practice, right? You're going to learn something. But if you want to be found, you have to go where you're going to be found, right? And Mike made a good point. Look, I doubt if women coaches are going to watch a game, they're not calling the men's coach either. Like, hey, you got to check this guy out. Like, they wouldn't do that either. It's a mutual respect. Mike, do you have something there?
No, I was going to say about time.
Yeah. Well, look, that actually leads us to our next one here, which is an interesting one for this year specifically. Myth: there's no future in girls hockey. Now, this is an interesting one because 24 months ago, it's almost a different conversation. Now, I do believe this to be a myth, but we are in a renaissance right now of women's sports where I don't know how anyone can believe that anymore, right? Also, I think when we discuss this, we got to discuss two things here, right? One is that there's the path of the player. There's also the path of being involved in the sport, right? Because again, look, we say this on every show we do on our kids play hockey, our goalies play hockey, our girls play hockey, and the ride to the rink. The ROI of youth hockey is the life skills you get to make, the people you get to meet, and the person you get to become. That is the overarching golden part of playing youth sports in general. But when it comes to this show, the myth I'm going to throw it to both of you, both women who work at high levels of hockey, that there's no future in women's hockey. The show alone debunks it, but let's discuss it.
Well, I'm sitting in an NHL front office right now recording this.
Wait,
So
I
if
can't
that
drop
doesn't,
my mic,
if
Sherry.
that
It might
doesn't, if
break,
that
yeah.
doesn't debunk it, that there is a future for you in hockey, and I work in men's hockey, right? I work for the Vegas Golden Knights. So
Right.
there is opportunity, although I did not make it playing professionally. There wasn't that opportunity for me when I was younger. I was a little bit older, but there is opportunity now for women in the game. Like you see it with Haley Wickenheiser. She's an assistant GM with the Toronto Maple Leafs, like Cami Granato. There's top levels. Now you're starting to see Jess Campbell. She's an assistant coach with the Seattle Kraken. So coaching positions are becoming available. There's broadcasters, a lot of great Cassie Campbell, Tessa Bonham. There's great female broadcasters, and you can work in ops, you can work in sponsorship, you can work in foundation, do community stuff. A ton of doors are opening now in men's hockey and women's hockey with the PWHL, but just because you're not playing doesn't mean like you can't stay involved in the game. And you don't need to be the next available Olympian to work in the NHL. I didn't play in the Olympics. And if you have passion for the game, there's a door that's going to open for you.
Yeah, Hannah, before I throw this to you, because Sherry's a humble person, I do want to say that the one thing that she has that none of us have, and most likely nobody listening to this has, is a Stanley Cup championship. I can't say that. I can't say I was involved in that. I can't say I had anything to do with that. Sherry, you can. And I encourage you all to listen to Our Kids Play Hockey episode with Sherry, where the cover image is her with the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, we got a beautiful gold ring to go with it, thanks to Mr. Foley.
Yeah. She has a Stanley Cup championship ring. I have pictures of them. Okay. Moving over to Hannah, who also has a gold medal, right, with Puerto Rico from the LATAM Cup. Like, is there future in women's hockey? It's funny you even ask it.
Is there? No. There is, it's so funny. The first like time you like said the myth, I thought to, like, I said this to someone, it's like, I'm so jealous of little girls right now because they are like, oh, I'm getting chills, like saying it, like right now where they're looking and with all the amazing pioneers and women who are in the spots where Sherry, you are, where Haley Wickenheiser is, where all the PWHL athletes are, and the list just goes on. Like the girls are seeing nothing but them being able to do it. Like when I was young, we were always saying, I'm going to play in the NHL. I'm going to be the first female NHL player. Now it's girls are saying, I'm going to go to the PWHL. And that is so just fascinating to me. And obviously I'm like beyond jealous that they have that, but it's just like so fascinating that like throughout all the different generations that are going, like it's just constantly growing. Like the women's sports in general are just boom, 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 boom. They're like stepping up the game and stepping up the expectations almost every single season. And it's so great to see. Obviously, lest we not forget the leagues that were here before the PWHL, which was the NWHL, was the PHF, the CWHL, the Canadian Women's Hockey League, with all the teams of that were there. They kind of really set the precedent, and I love always like giving them credit too, because even though we didn't have much for my generation to look up to of what we can make, where we can make it after college, I did see those leagues and I grew up around those leagues, and I idolized a lot of players in those leagues. One of my old coaches who's still in the PWHL right now, Madison Packer, like she's a pioneer that I grew up watching, and she was my New Jersey Rockets U16 coach, and I was so lucky to be coached by her and to just like see her keeping on with the game and growing and doing everything. Just the growth is just going to go through the roof at some point, and it already is up there. Just with the PWHL and the successes and selling out all these NHL arenas, like I couldn't help but get teary-eyed with the game at Scotiabank Arena with PWHL Toronto versus Montreal. That game was absolutely sold out. The game was rocking. It was so cool to see, and just the pictures of like Marie-Philip Poulin and Laura Stacey like looking up just in awe of like everyone there to watch women's hockey. It's growing, and right now women's sports in general is just becoming sport. And it's not, oh, people are talking about women's sports. People are just talking about sports, and females are in that conversation. And it's so great, and I love that girls are now watching these women in offices like you, Sherry, in PWHL uniforms, you know, getting a paycheck for playing professional hockey. They can't do anything but aspire to be in their position, and that's so cool to see. And it's just gonna grow from here. I can't wait for down the line to say now that the PWHL like has like 10 teams. Like I can't wait until that moment happens. And I have no doubt in my mind that it probably will. So it is growing so much. Like it's like an overwhelming amount that it's growing, and it's so cool.
You know, our producer, Caitlin, who many of you hear us reference on the show all the time, in her office has this, it's a plaque. It's like a framed picture. It says, "Women belong in sports." And we decided when we moved into this office that that needs to be very prominently displayed so that anyone who comes in here sees that. And we're proud about that here, right? The other thing too, and I'll tell a quick story here, and this is cool. You know, there's that phrase about, I wish someone would tell us that we're in the good times when we're in them, right? And it's funny with women's hockey, the generational growth. You know, I've referenced on this show many times how watching the '98 women's Olympic team was my introduction to women's hockey, and I was enthralled with it, right? And I was younger then, right? I was in my teens at that point, but that was my introduction to it. And then, as you said, all these other leagues, all these other opportunities in college hockey have grown that. Here's a cool story though. As we said, Hannah plays for the Puerto Rican national team. My daughter and my son also take part in this association at the youth levels. And I had this really awesome opportunity at one of our last events, to bring all of the young ladies that we coach to meet the national team. And the challenge was kind of on me of like, I wanted to do a team building exercise together. But when you have, you know, collegiate and professional athletes and a 7-year-old kid, like I figured, what can we do that's gonna, you know, work here, right? So I said, well, you know what, rock paper scissors is pretty, you know, you can win that if you're 7 years old. And the look on the young ladies when they were going against the team, the way they were looking at you was, I mean, it struck me. I mean, again, I've seen it before in other people, but what I was thinking about, Hannah, was that this is the norm for them. Now, this is completely the norm for them. And then I got a really great moment with my daughter. You know, not that I was using my behind the scenes access or anything, but you were playing and I got to bring her right to the glass, right next to the bench. And you all acknowledged her coming off the ice. I mean, high-fived her. But like we always hear those stories about how the NHL player tosses the puck to the kid in the stands, and that's the moment. You provided that for my daughter, right? And whether it's Team Puerto Rico or a PWHL team, this is now the world she's growing up in. And look, should she decide to continue to play, I mean, I don't know what the future is. I'm not putting any pressure on her, but she has seen a world in which that is now the norm. And that's something we got to continually push forward, across the board. It's not just in girls hockey, right? That the future is what you can see, right? Until you see it, it's not real. I think there's a broad portion of the population out there that just doesn't think that way sometimes because they've been seeing it every day for their entire life. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, yeah, I love, I mean, obviously, like, I got little chills there, and I still see that moment with your little girl every day too. But, you know, I thought about the times where, during the NWHL, you know, there were players, giving me pucks, and there was one player in particular, she gave me her stick and she signed it. And that just goes to show, like, if, you know, you just, these players, if they're putting, which almost all of these players do, they put a lasting impact on these young little girls, going forward. And it's just so, it's great to see, because I always think about the quote, right? The classic quote within women's hockey and women's sports: if you can see it, you can be it. And it's just so fantastic. And that's why also a lot of times everyone is really pressuring the the media coverage and the coverage of women's sports, women's hockey, in general, because that goes such a long way, right? Like if little girls can't see them doing something, they don't know if they can do it. And that was something for my generation. We had no clue. We didn't know, like not many players, even like I had teammates who I say the CWHL and they're like, the what? Like I don't know what that is. And I was just like, you didn't know what that was? Like what? And you know, like for me, like I saw it and so I thought I could be that. And so now with the PWHL, it's like you're scrolling on Twitter and you see it. So now some little girl at home is going to see Poulan being such a pillar and a pioneer and someone who is pushing women's hockey by just being who she is and by being the fantastic player that she is and person as well, because she is a incredible human being, from just seeing her with just talking to media and talking to fans. And even she had a quick words with me and she just a quick, hey, how you doing today? Like at Worlds. And it's just like, wow, like that goes a longer way than she probably may think it does. So it's like, it's so important right now with like coveraging and showing how much women's hockey is, and women's sports in general, is legit. And so we could just keep going from there. And yeah, these girls are going to be, you know, doing something big for little girls at home around the world.
Yeah.
Before moving to Vegas, I lived in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and I coached a 12U girls team with the Johnstown Warriors. And Team USA came through and they were playing in Pittsburgh. And we took all our girls to the game. They watched the game. And then after, we were fortunate enough to get like a meet and greet with some of the players, right? So they finished their workout. And we had our girls all lined up ready for them to come out of the gym and just quickly meet our players, say hi, you know, sign some stuff for them. And a bunch of them came out, but our goalie was standing at the front of the line and she was just perked up, like waiting to see Maddie Rooney. Just like, that's the only player she wanted to see. And Maddie Rooney didn't come out of the locker room. For whatever reason, she just didn't come out. And our goalie just started bawling because all the players like Lamoureux, Hillary Knight, everyone pretty much came through, but for whatever reason, Maddie didn't. The kid starts just bawling. She's like, Maddie, you know, I didn't get to meet Maddie. Hillary Knight recognized this, took the kid down to the locker room, got Maddie Rooney out of the locker room, and this kid got to have a very special moment and meet her hero just privately one-on-one and ask some questions. And that probably changed that kid's life. You know what I mean? And then another kid, like Lamoureux, and for Christmas, she asked for a Lamoureux jersey instead of, you know, a Crosby jersey. So seeing the girls, having them at the games and meeting these players and having female ambassadors, it does make an impact. It does get through to kids.
Yeah, and it's something I think we all play a role in. Like you said, and Hillary Knight's a good example of this, just the recognition of what's happening, the recognition you can change it. You know, we just, again, thinking broad strokes here, like I remember that story of Carey Price and that kid in the crowd whose mother had passed away, and he recognized something was wrong.
Yeah.
We've always said it on every show. Hockey players are very talented hockey players. They're also really talented people. They're really good people. And we've had those people in women's hockey, and it's just great now that stage or that broadcast grows and grows and grows, right? So I would say this myth was busted before we even talked about it, but we did need to talk about it. The next one, we're going to do a little turn here. This is a really important one, and I'm going to give this right to Sherry and Hannah, because Mike and I probably shouldn't talk too much about this one in terms of we need to listen. But the myth is this: girls have to have a certain body type and mindset to play ice hockey.
This is an important topic. And, you know, part of the reason why we're doing the show is to talk about these topics. So parents, if you're listening, turn it up right now. If you're 15 years old, you're 16 years old, turn this up, right? Because we want to get into body image and hockey players' body image, especially for women. Hockey's a game of acceleration, right? You're going to have big quads. You need your big glutes and quads to skate fast and skate hard. If you're skating at the college level and the pro level, you're on the ice 2 hours a day, you're in the gym maybe 1 or 2 hours a day, and you're putting some weight on, especially like in your bumps. Like you're going to have a big bump from skating. The men have it, the women have it. But women's hockey players are not a size 0. They're not a size 2. And if you look at like, you know, just society's view of women and body images, that you need to be skinny and And you see a lot of girls, not a lot of girls, but like I've heard the comments like in the gym where they don't want to get too muscly, right? And it's like, if you're going to play at a high level, you need to have some muscles. And if you look at the Team USA athletes and college athletes, their body types, they have bigger shoulders, they got triceps, they have abs, they have glutes, big quads, and they're all sizes. Like you have players that are 5'10", 6 foot, and then you have arguably one of the best players right now is Kendall Coyne, and she's 5'2". So, you know, with men's hockey where they're like, you have to be 6'2", you have to be 200 pounds, they're trying to put weight on. This is not men's hockey. The PWHL doesn't even list their height and weight. So a big myth is yeah, with body image, we have to just get away from that and have positive self-talk about body image.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Sherry's points. It's tough, right? Like with me, you know, I'm never hiding. I love working out in the gym, you know, getting stronger, especially with like my quads and stuff. That was something that was always an issue for me and always has been, is actually putting on weight. I'm a small girl. I'm also 5'3" on a good day. And you know, no matter how much I work out and how much I try to gain muscle, for some reason my weight doesn't change. But I didn't really let that get to me. If I felt strong and if I felt I needed to get stronger, then I did that. But there is a lot of, I think, you know, conversations that are missed within young girl hockey players, that you don't need to go into the gym, or yeah, you'll get there. Maybe you just focus on your endurance right now. Like if you want to get to the highest level, you have to kind of just put that all aside and just work so hard in the gym. Off ice training is so important and it's so crucial. And you know, Lee, you mentioned mindset of, you know, playing, and I think the biggest thing with around athletes is obviously mental health, right? And that goes along with our physical health as well. And you know, it's definitely not it's not like a lie that hockey in general and sports in general plays a huge mental toll on you. It does. It's a tough thing. It goes with competition. You know, if you don't play well one night, then you're upset for 24 hours, because that was me. And a lot of times it goes into emotion as well. And a huge thing I think with girls hockey is that, you know, it's okay that if you're not feeling your best self one day. You know, there's a lot of girls, especially within college hockey, who maybe will look in the mirror and be like, oh, I hate wearing dresses because my shoulders
Yeah,
are so large.
that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally,
People make comments too, like, oh,
yeah,
you're
all the
too
time.
muscly, or you look weird in a
Yeah.
dress because you have a spaghetti strap dress on and
Right.
you're jacked in your
Jacked,
arms. So
yeah. Yeah, that's me. I mean, that's me, right? Like I have super broad shoulders. Like
and you work super hard to get jacked, and then
exactly
only to hear comments from
right.
like aunts at weddings that you're too
Yes.
big, and it's
Oh,
like
it's so tough. Or, you know, you get the comments like, why don't you wear dresses? Well, what, you're a girl. And it's like, okay, for me personally, I don't like to. I like to wear pants, and that's just a personal preference for me because I'm a hockey player, because I'm an athlete. I really feel more comfortable in my pants. And it's not because I don't want to show off my muscular legs. I mean, I'm wearing shorts all the time too. So it's the same thing. But yeah, you kind of have to go with just the reminder all the time in your head of, I'm an athlete, I am strong, I need to be strong, my quads need to be really muscular in order for me to skate fast and for my agility to be at the best it can be. And it's tough. It's definitely, there's a lot of times too, I think a huge topic that's important to touch on as well is nutrients, because some athletes and some female athletes will say, okay, well, I'm really big here and I've put on all this muscle, so therefore I'm going to skip 2 meals today because I don't want to overdo it. And that's something for me personally. I've always talked to friends, I've talked to teammates, and I said nutrients is so important for you, for athletes, for us athletes. We have to fuel our bodies so we can compete at the best to our physical ability. And that's something too that I think needs to be talked about more, especially with youth hockey, and parents at home too. If you're really listening to this, like, you got to hone in on making sure your female athlete is eating properly while also training their physical body and their muscles. It goes hand in hand. So it's super important.
Yeah,
You know,
I
oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, just staying on the topic of, body type and mindset for hockey, women or men, boys, girls, is just make sure you're in an age appropriate environment to do those things. I mean, I think, if you're a girl on a 12-year-old boys team and you're working out the same way, you might have to look at that and see your pediatrician and see a sports, nutritionist and a physiologist, and just make sure that you're not doing things that you shouldn't be doing with the body type, with the size, with the weight, with the age, with your, puberty, like just all those kind of things. Because I think, say, 12-year-old hockey team, they're all the same. And I'm not saying this just for girls either. This is
that's everyone.
And say hockey's done a great job of showing those studies that, like, biologically, a kid on a 12U team might be 9, could be 14,
right?
Like, depending on where that kid is. So just be aware of that. Like I said, I think it's ironic that the body type conversation comes up when the fact that women's hockey is getting more and more and more physical, and coaches are looking for bigger and stronger and nastier players. So it's going to be, but then you got, on the boys' side too, you wouldn't expect a Goudreau to be out there, laying somebody out at center ice, right? So there's a room, there's a place for all types of players. But just be aware of when you're in that developmental stage. And that's really the audience we talk to, right? Is that young developmental stage. Just do your research and make sure you don't lump everyone into the same time frame.
Exactly.
Mike, what's funny is that, and I always use this metaphor across the board, is that when they're babies or toddlers, we always say, well, they'll speak at a different rate, they'll grow at a different rate, they'll walk, they'll run. Like, we're very patient with very young children on their development of these skills. And then there's this, it's a myth, but it's like, there's this thought process, that stops at a certain point. And then the process, like, when you're 21, it never stops. Like, there are grownups that are slower to things than other people. It's just, your development is not on a set path. I mean, there may be benchmarks. When you have young kids, your kids in the 12th percentile, they give you these things, but the learning, the growing never really stops, right? Mm-hmm. So the point I'm making is this: we're so patient with really young children, but we lose that patience for some reason, even as young as 12.
Yeah.
Like you said it, Mike, perfectly. I know 12-year-olds that look like they're 16, and I know 12-year-olds that look like they're 10. There's no correct path, but there is the ability to speak to a professional, a doctor, all right, someone who knows that. And again, Hannah, that goes back to what you were talking about, is, doing what's correct, making sure you understand your body and the way to do that. I do want to bring this up too, and this is kind of for the dads that are listening, and this will merge actually into the final myth at some point. My wife is obviously a wonderful person. I love her very much. I always joke she's 5 foot, but I look up to her because I'm closer to 6 foot. But she always gives me great perspective, right? She's a high level person in her field, and she'll come home and tell me stories of being a woman in a high power position, and sometimes the lack of respect or the lack of awareness of what she has to deal with from a societal pressures system, or that, she's a woman in that role. The way I'm merging this back into this, all right, with body type and with a mentality, as a dad, that's how I'm asking this question. What should I know to ask my daughter or not ask my daughter, right? I think there's two sides to that, because again, I'm not a young girl. It's not something I understand. So when it comes to body type and mentality for a youth athlete who's a girl, what maybe are the questions or the approaches I should be taking as a father?
I think one huge thing I immediately thought about was how my dad spoke to me when I was a kid. And one, I'm very blessed with my father, because he just, for so many things. But the one main thing is, he always knew I was an athlete. He always knew that that's what I was going to strive at, that was my thing. We were all athletes, but he knew that was like what I was always going to do. Mm-hmm. So for him, I noticed he didn't talk to me like I was his little girl, or he didn't talk to me like I was his boy. He talked to me like I was just me. Like he didn't change, right? Like I have one brother, so he's the only boy and my dad out of the whole family. So for us, like I noticed that he didn't really talk to us any different. He just talked to us like we were us. Um, and something especially with my sport and with hockey is and he was an athlete, a college athlete too, and he just always asked me the one question: how are you feeling?
Mhm.
And it was always after practice, after a training session. And I feel that question goes a long way, especially from a dad, because he's not saying like he was never one where he said you were slow today, so you better work out more. Oh, you look skinny today. Like he never did that. He was just like, hey, we got to gain some more muscle. I noticed you were a little, your power isn't so there. We gotta hit more squats. And then, but at the same time, he was always like, okay, how is your food today? Like he wasn't just hounding me, but it was always just the thing of how am I feeling? Because if I was feeling good, then he wasn't gonna pressure me into anything. He was like, if I said, oh, I'm feeling a little weak, then he'd be like, okay, so we got to do this, 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 this. He was always motivating. And that I think is for dads and their girl athletes is proper words, and just like knowing, okay, let me not push, let me not make her feel as though I'm going, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this. Just always just leading with, tell me how you're feeling physically, mentally, emotionally right now, and then we can just figure out a solution, because that's him too. He's a problem solver with everything in life, so he just wants to figure out what can we do. So just careful words and careful and just consideration on, okay, what maybe does she need right now? Depending on what she needs, then I can help her in whatever aspect she needs.
Sure, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think with girls, obviously confidence is huge.
Yeah.
So you want to have, be positive, have good encouragement for girls and try to keep their confidence up. In the younger youth hockey, I don't think there's any instance where you need to talk about body type or weight to these athletes. Like if you're in youth hockey, focus on skill development, help
Yeah.
them with their confidence, help them get through drills. I don't think it's your lane at all to say anything to young players, boys or girls, about their body type, good
Mhm.
or bad. Like stay away from it, focus on skills, focus on building confidence, building good people. If you're in the college space, then yeah, like if you have a player that's, maybe second year, they've been going out too much, putting on a little
Yeah.
too much malt weight, then yeah, you can say that to them. You can weigh them in. You can do their heights and weights where it's age appropriate. The pro levels, especially, they probably do a lot of testing, I'm assuming. In that space, it's appropriate to talk to women about, their athletic body types and how they can improve for their athletic development. But in youth hockey, stay in your lane,
Yeah,
focus on skill development, keep confidence up and build good kids and good people.
absolutely.
Love it. Well, it's another myth debunked, right? That there is no specific body type that you have to have. But that's going to bring us to our final myth. And again, I appreciate you both answering that question, because I know there's a lot of dads and fathers, and in addition to the mothers and the siblings that listen to this show, that might not know necessarily how to ask or not to ask certain questions or what to look for. But the last myth we're going to debunk, this is a funny one to me, is that girls are harder to coach than boys. I
Mm.
say it's a funny one to me because first off, I don't care who I'm coaching, but it's like I'm coaching who I'm coaching. There's no difference to me in terms of how I'm doing it, in terms of a difficulty level. But why don't we throw this to you two? Girls are harder to coach than boys. You have the table.
Absolute myth. Girls are the best listeners, I think. I coach a 10U girls team right now. And whenever we have power skating coaches or boys coaches that coach a 14U or 12U boys team, if they work with our girls at any age, I always get a feedback that, man, I love coaching the girls. They listen so much better than the boys. They want to learn. They want to be taught. They want you to push them. They want to learn. Whereas boys, especially like if you're 8U, 10U, they're out there hitting each other with sticks, they're punching each other in line, like they're all over
What
the
are you
place,
talking
right?
about? That doesn't
But
happen. It
yeah,
totally
my
happen. It
the girls,
absolutely
they're
happens.
not punching each other in line and stuff. Like, it doesn't happen. They're ready to go. They're happy. They're encouraged. They sing songs in the locker room. Like, they just have a great time. So
Yeah, I literally took the words right out of my mouth, Sherry. The attentiveness is so different. Right now, I'm mainly coaching boys, and it's like they're slapping pucks everywhere. They can't listen for more than a minute.
Hey, go nice here. This it wasn't a bash boy minute. No, go ahead.
yeah, we're
wrong.
not like the
You're not.
Michigans. They did
Oh
nonstop
my
Michigans.
gosh. Yeah, they're learning how to toe drag while you're trying to teach them power play. It's like, what are you
I
doing?
can't deny any of this. That's the
Yeah,
sad
no,
part.
it's super interesting. Girls are so attentive, and especially in the youth level, they're there to learn. They know why they're there. They know the purpose of whichever practice you're at in that moment. And they're just like I said this way in the beginning, they're just dialed in. Like, they're just like, okay, here we go. Puck. Yep, that's what coach is saying. Got it. It's like the boys are like all over the place. I had one kid, like, he wore sunglasses on the ice. I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, what's going on? And it's like the girl, I remember I would always be like, if I had these clinics with boys, like, I'm on the side and I'm just waiting for the coach to blow the whistle, like, to yell at them, and they're all having a party over there. But yeah, it's super interesting. I think girls are they just know that it's business at the second they go on the ice. Like, even as Sherry said, like, even 8U, like, these girls are just like ready to go, and they're there to learn. And boys are just dancing around. But not to say that there's no boys who aren't attentive.
Yeah, nice save there, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Not to say all boys.
Disclaimer, not all
Yeah.
boys.
Disclaimer, not
Look,
all boys, but I think I would love, I definitely raise my hand when it's girls.
this is what I would say, at least in my experience coaching. There are some differences in coaching boys and girls, but I would never qualify a difference as it's easier to coach boys than girls or vice versa. I think that coaching is hard in the best possible way. And I think that your ability to adapt and learn and grow, no matter who you're coaching, this is nothing to even do with boys and girls. That's on the coach, right? So I think that if you think coaching one, gender is harder than the other, that's probably more of a you problem than it is the people on the ice. But look, let's from the male perspective, no, let's go to Mike, because Mike has coached obviously professional women's hockey, and he's coached boys hockey at a high level. I mean, Mike, have you ever found there to be a difference, or is one easier than the other in your point of view?
And I think this falls under the same thing. Like, where are they in their maturation process, and where are they in, listen, I'll work with a bunch of 16-year-old really serious boys that aren't screwing around. They're listening, they're working. And I've been with a bunch of 16-year-old girls that are like giggling in the corner and afraid to do something wrong. And I've been on the opposite, like girls that you're like, holy crap, like I'd never go in the corner with her. Like, I'm going to come out with, broken nose. So it's like, it's just a matter of, knowing your audience. And I think, and we've talked about this on the show a couple of times on this particular, on girls hockey, is just knowing where you're at in their space. Like, okay, if you have a bunch of girls that are attentive and they're listening and they're able to, maybe concentrate better than other 8-year-old boys. There's a comedian out there that says, like, I have a daughter and I had to watch my brother's son, and it was like, oh my God, nobody prepared me for this. Like, the same age, the same year of birth, everything the same. And the girl's like, can I sit here? Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that? And the boy's like, chewing on the bottom of the table or something like that, 5 minutes in. So it's just where are they at? Where are they at in their maturation process? And I also think it's funny when you get girls alone coaching and boys alone coaching, because how you can use them. Like, I've often used the girls in that age group, like if it's like a bunch of 9-year-olds, and I'll bring, hey, Abigail, you come here and you lead the group. And all of a sudden the boys they'll get in there, because they'll be like, what do you mean she's leading the group? Why is she leading the group? So it's they kind of fall into line, because I'm like, well, she's the only one paying attention. Like, she's in it. Like, she wants to be in it. So it's just a matter of, where are you at with the kids you're with? And, again, but listen, there's no doubt about it. There's a reason, I think, Sherry, we've talked one of our episodes, there's a reason why, like at the learn to play level, I used to put girls in their own group because it was just actually easier for them to learn because there wasn't somebody out there just like, wanting to whack the back of their legs. They'll that group's doing that over there. And it just is. Now, maybe we maybe we allow that to happen because maybe maybe I was instigating that more, but there's no doubt there's a distinct difference. I don't know if it's easier or harder. I know me for a male coach with younger girls, I think more about what I say and how I say it. And that's just because I'm an old guy and, I don't want to say the wrong thing politically, and get somebody upset with me. And I also will say that I'm a yeller. I'm a loud, boisterous person when I coach. And I couldn't do that with the girls. It was and a lot of boys, but I couldn't get into a circle and be like, rah, 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 and and just start yelling and screaming, not in a negative way, but in a just a like we got to move kind of way. And you just learn to adjust. But listen, some coaches don't learn how to adjust, and I think that's where maybe they think, oh, I can't coach these girls; it's too hard.
Yeah, I'm not very loud. I'm not a screamer or yeller. If you see like a college practice or a high level Olympic practice, there's no screaming and yelling like in the women's hockey. Like if they're yelling, it's like at a drill or turn, like they're yelling something like that, but definitely not yelling at the player. And I think coaching the girls, you need to coach with a little bit more empathy. Like they do have maybe more emotions in it. You need to be able to recognize like if a girl's having a bad day, maybe she needs to sit out this rep for a few minutes, or like if they have anxiety or something like that, like yeah, just sit it out, whereas maybe a male coach is like, just get back in the line, skate it out. You're fine. Let's go. Like, I think female coaches coaching girls maybe coach with a little bit more empathy.
Yeah. Look, here's something I'll tell you too. Like a lot of this also just comes from great conversations like this one and learning as much as you can. A great female coach friend of mine one time gave me the advice when it comes to team building. And I'll preface this with, this is not necessarily true across the board, but it's something I have found to be congruent to the most part, is that when I work with a men's team or a high level boys team, there's a different approach to the quote unquote healthy competition and pitting one person against another person. Whereas with women's team, I tend not to do that. It's more of a collaborative, let's reach the goal together approach. And I found that to be more beneficial. That does not mean women cannot go one-on-one. It doesn't mean anything like that. It just comes down to what am I trying to accomplish from a team building standpoint, right? So I think you got to ask questions. You got to try things. But if there's ever been an overarching thought for an episode for me, I look at all the myths that we just talked about. This is really just about meeting people where they're at. Right. Yeah. It's not allowing stigmas and myths to come in of, oh, that's a girl, so this, and this must be true. Like, no, it's you meet that human being where that human being is at. Don't, take the boy girl thing out of it and just see where they're at, see what their goals are, see what they want to do, see what their problems are, see what their concerns are, and meet that person as another person. Sure, I think that talks right to the empathy thing. Look, I can tell you right now, empathy should be across the board in all sports, in all levels, and all people, right? If you have a good definition of empathy, right? I think sometimes people come with empathy. Oh, that's weakness, being soft. It's not what empathy is. It's literally meeting someone where they're at. It's like kind of what I'm saying, right? Go ahead, Anna.
I think it's one thing too, it came up in my mind where like I think a lot of players, girls and boys, doesn't matter who, really adhere to certain coaching styles that they like, as in like the player from their coach. So many of us throughout the levels that we go, we meet so many different coaches and so many different coaching styles. I feel like almost every single coach has a different style and how they coach their player.
I think coaching boys and girls, you have to know you can't treat everyone the same, right? There's kids that you're really gonna be able to push, and that gets the best out of them. And there's kids you have to just go talk to quietly in the corner and be like, hey, you did really good, but let's try to fix this. So you have to check in, I think, individually with all your players, boys or girls, and know what you have and know how to get the best out of each individual player.
I so agree with that, and I feel like I would have loved that from not just my trainer at home. Like if I had my travel coach do what he would do to every single player, I think that proponent is so huge, because kind of knowing who each of your player is and how each of them, really like succeed at being coached, excuse me. I feel like that will go such a long way. And I feel like now too, as we grow and as it kind of like, revolves around just like, obviously every player is different. Every player, wants to be coached differently. Like having coaches kind of like step back and like realize, okay, that player doesn't want to talk to me, doesn't like succeed when I pull them to the side. So I'm not going to do that, but that player does. So I'll do that with that player. And I feel like that's like definitely such a huge thing, and is so important to like, you have a 22 person roster, like kind of bring that personal actions into it will, super important.
Yeah, we see it here at the NHL level, just, fortunate enough to get to watch Vegas Golden Knights practices every day. And
Yeah.
you'll see Bruce Cassidy skate half a lap with one player, just checking in. So yeah, you have to just, check in your guys. That's a nice Pete Whitney takeaway that I got from Post. He was really dialed in on like checking in on all your guys and make sure that no one falls through the cracks.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're coaching like high, big rosters of, college rosters where their higher player counts. Yeah, and then if you have youth hockey, it's like you only have 14 kids on your team. You don't get to see them too much. So if you can, with the time that you do have with them, make a positive impact on them.
You guys keep name dropping. Pete Whitney has been on more guest appearances on the show than anybody else. Madison Pack
Learned
has
a
been on the
lot.
show
Pete Whitney's a
before.
great.
Final notes on this before we kind of round this out is that, yeah, I always say to parents and players, it's kind of across the board, whether you like your coach or not. If a coach is not talking to you, like no communication, that's typically not a good thing for either
Yeah.
side, right? I always tell the players when a coach is not focused on you, that's when you should probably be worried.
Yep.
Right? Because now you're off the radar in a lot of different ways. And it could be your fault, could be their fault, could be both your faults. But you if a coach is on you all the time, you might not like it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It means that they care enough to talk to you. But there is a right way to do it. And I think, Hannah, another point you're making, this is good across the board as well. It's like relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more coaches you have, you'll know how you're motivated. You'll know what type of coaching you like. It's important to know that as a player, to analyze both ways, right? One is, okay, I know how to motivate I know how to get motivated. I know how a coach can motivate. You can communicate that to a coach, or you can look and see, well, I don't think that coach is going to provide that. But you can also do some self-reflection on that too, of, okay, I like this, but am I too critical when someone's yelling at me, for an example, right? Like, does that motivate some people? So it's all growing, it's all learning what
Yeah.
you like and what you don't like.
Yeah, but that's like so important. And I've realized that, like I said, like throughout my whole career. And like one thing that just came up for me, I'll say quickly, is, and this has a lot of pros and cons, but I feel like you said, when you notice a coach is not talking to you, there's been something wrong, either on both parties or one of the parties. I have heard so many players, I've been kind of the person, especially with my hockey ops position. I was very much a person who, I put myself out to the players, being like, if you need anyone to talk to, I'm here. And I would feel, not only at Utica, but just like in general and throughout my whole career, I would hear players say, I'm scared to go talk to coach
Mhm.
about this, or
Yeah.
no, I don't want to bother him. I don't want to bother her. I don't want to be always in their ear, always in there. I will say that there's no problem. Just like you said, Lee, it's also about relationships, right?
Right.
We always talk about how communication is so key. And I think players have to keep in mind that communication is key. If your coach isn't speaking to you, that is your immediate sign the next day at practice or Monday after games, or especially if you just had games and your coach didn't even bat an eye at you. Monday morning, you need to walk into his or her office and say, hey, I think we need to check in. I really think, this is what I feel. I feel this about my play. I want to hear your feedback. A huge thing too is feedback. And I feel like a lot of coaches need to be aware of that. Because, it's hard, right? I've been the player where I'm on the bench and I'm seeing coaches talk to this player nonstop, or this player, and I'm over there like, okay, like damn, like I need to get talked to. And right, if they're not talking to you, that is your chance. You immediately, it's hard, and
Yeah.
it's a hard step to take, but having that braveness and having that courage of standing up, walking into the office, or sending a text. I always, a big thing for me was, I like to give the coach a heads up, being like, hey, I really feel like we need to talk. When does the time work for you?
Yeah, I think coaches need to establish what the communication structure is right at the beginning. I can tell you this right now: if trust and communication aren't there, you don't have a team. I don't
Yeah.
care. I don't care who you are, what you know, what you've done. If you don't have
1000%.
trust and communication set up within your team, you don't have a team. It has to be there. The other thing I want to note on this, and Mike and I talk about this a lot too in the years we've been doing this show, is that players and coaches both have to remember this. When you're a player, for the most part, you're going to be wondering whether or not coach is focused on you. Right? It's like being a parent. You're only really watching your kid when you really think you watch your kid more than anybody else on the ice. And the thing is this: when you're a coach, more often than not, you care about everyone. You care about everyone on this team, but there could be 15 to 20 people on that team, right? It's not always easy to tap each one of them. So that's why communication is so important. I think this totally works to that myth topic about coaching girls as well, right? It's not more difficult. It's with any players, you've got to make sure that like you said it, Sherry, like, hey, I care. I'm here. The door's open. Just saying what you said, Hannah, too. The door's always open. I would like for you to text me or email me prior to stepping into that door and screaming your head off or venting whatever it is you want to vent, but the door's open. That's a
I just
solution.
want to add in one thing to parents is have your player get comfortable talking to the coach themselves. The parent doesn't need to come talk to the coach after the game. Like the kid can ask.
Coaches love that, Sherry. What are you talking about? Coaches love it when parents come up to them.
I love it when kids ask me like, Coach, how can I get better? Right. And get them comfortable at a young age talking, about their performance and whether it's good or bad. Like, Coach, can we talk? And I think that's going to go a lot longer way with, for the athlete's development in their social life, in their professional life, that they get used to talking to adults and not having the parents just mow down the path for them and making everything easy on them.
Yeah, Sherry, exactly. I will say this too, with my son and my daughter. I challenge them to learn something, right? And I always challenge them, if you have a question, ask your coach. And look, I'm in a unique position. They always feel like they can ask me. And I said, well, some things you can, but for your team, ask your coach and be curious. Ask great questions. You'll get great answers. Go learn something. You can encourage that behavior. I think as adults, that's an assumed behavior. Kids don't necessarily work that way. They're in school all day. They're told to sit there, listen, and do this. I get there's a lot of great teachers out there that engage. But my point is you play a role with that with your kids to encourage them to ask questions, encourage them to interact. So we're going to get off on a completely different episode topic if we don't round this out here. But look, I think we debunked all 5 myths. And I'm sure there's more myths out there for those of you listening in podcast land. If there's more myths, more topics within women's hockey that you want us to debunk or discuss, make sure to email us at team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. This is an open forum for sure. And I have loved doing these episodes. I'm learning so much, and that's the point. It's having the conversation, right? I wish we could look at certain aspects of hockey and say, this is the correct way to do this. But most things in life aren't like that either. And that's why we have to have these discussions. But Hannah Beckman, you've been a fantastic guest, expert panelist, as we say. Your career is far from over. And I'll say that, look, I joke all the time with Sherry that you are a trailblazer, and Hannah, you're well on your way to that as well. You're like a shining bright light right now with where you're at in the game. And again, even as I said with my daughter, you've both shined that light on her, right? And that's how you grow, and that's how things progress forward. But I'm going to give Sherry and Mike any chance to give final thoughts. Hannah, you as well, and then I'll close this out.
No, this is great, Hannah. Thank you for being here. And really enjoying going to be watching you grow the game out in Puerto Rico.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, both of you. Sherry, it's been so cool to hear all your thoughts, and Mike as well, you. So yeah, this has been so fun, and I can't wait for what's to come.
Yeah, no, great episode. Thanks so much for coming on. And like I said, this is one of those things where you take these little pieces from all these episodes and compile them, and you're in the car ride home, and instead of berating your daughter about how she played, just find ways to make a better experience.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of Our Girls Play Hockey. Remember, all the episodes available on ourkidsplayhockey.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. But that's going to do it for Mike Benelli, Sherry Hudspeth, and Hannah Beckman. I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you on the next edition of Our Girls Play Hockey. Take care, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.